Secret of the Mimic! One of the longest, most awaited games of the FNAF series has finally come out, and for once, I am so excited to cover it. It has been a long time since I've been this amped up to review something that I was kind of apathetic towards starting off. And let me just tell you, I am so glad that Steelwool has finally turned everything around and changed my tune. Now, obviously, I don't really want to spoil my thoughts to start off with, but it is such a refresher seeing that Steelwool still has that passion within them and can still pump out some pretty decent games. It would not be an overstatement to say that this has become one of my new favorites of the FNAF series. I'm not gonna lie though, with Into the Pit coming out, I was worried. I was a little bit worried. Renewed faith aside, I really just want to get into my thoughts about this game. I've structured it a little bit differently than I normally do, just because I have a lot that I'd like to talk about. So I'm going to be giving you the rundown of the basic plot. I want to talk about the pacing, the puzzles, the horror elements, the audio, the visuals, the bugs. Can't have a Steelwool game without talking about the bugs. And then I'm going to be capping it off with the lore, or rather what I am interpreting the game is trying to tell us. Now, even though I wasn't necessarily super excited going into this game due to Steelwool's interesting, to say the least, marketing practices. Seriously, Steelwool, why the fuck did you release hours of footage 2 days before the game came out? What is wrong with you? I got spoiled before I could even play! Anyway, let's just start off before I rant some more. Our story begins with our protagonist, Arnold, driving down the road where he is contacted by Dispatch, a Fazbear representative of sorts. Our barely functioning shell of a man, but still best boy, is tasked with entering Murray's Costume Manor and fetching some property owed to Fazbear. Once Arnold enters the facility, he is greeted with the revelation that Dispatch has quite literally voluntold him for an actual death trap. Now trapped in the building, our continuously sleep-deprived friend is guided along the way, finding bodies in the Mimic's wake. He upgrades his data diver, traversing deeper in where he finds Jackie. And in no time flat, the Mimic enters Jackie and chases Arnold, who barely survives, falling down from a vent back into the security office, thankfully, safely. From there, he briefly berates Dispatch before sadly giving up and trekking on. In cut dialogue, it's actually revealed that Arnold's poor, unfortunate circumstances extend far beyond Fazbear's. His wife left him, his parents are dead, and maybe even has a kid that he's not allowed to see.
What family? My parents are dead. My wife left me last year. Oh God, I haven't seen my kid for...
On top of that, Arnold is tasked to head to the rooftop, where Big Top is topped up with the Mimic's girthy secret inside him, where he then attacks Arnold, resulting in another barely livable scenario. Our favorite depressed walking corpse pushes forward with another upgrade in tow, and heads to the theater, where he assembles a spring-lock suit in all of its piratey glory. Unfortunately for Arnold's continuously deteriorating mental health, and probably a few too many fat jokes, he finds himself falling through the floor again after being inside the suit. Seriously, this is like the fourth time. Who is this, Queso? Upon his fall, he wakes up to the face of Dolly, who threatens to put him in a bleach bath after scooping him out of this suit. And after another section of sneaking around and hoping for not death or spring locking, Arnold is able to throw this weird built-in high heels having animatronic into the oven. Unfortunately for Arnold, and very fortunately for our ears, Arnold finds that Dolly isn't really dead, and she bursts from the walls, melting them with her touch as she chases Arnold through the facility with the most banger of the OSTs in the background. Once again, Arnold is goated and twerks on this supposed unstoppable robot, where we get our first reveal of the Mimic before he runs away like a bitch. Arnold, now at the second highest security level in the facility, begins heading to the top, escaping a room full of cupcakes and Chica. EDP's wet dream for sure. Enter the final office after getting executive perms and see Edwin's life's work, the schematics of the Mimic. We take it with our data diver and run back to the security office, meeting up with a strange potential hallucination of Tiger Rock all the while. Finally, at the end now, we receive the schematics from Edwin's office and make it back to security. Now presented with the choice, you can either give dispatch the data diver and leave, in which you are brutally slaughtered by the Mimic in an honestly banger bad ending. But I think seeing Arnold this entire game safeguarding his holes from this Mimic's secret is far more deserving of a much more pleasant ending. So if you then decide to activate the parachute.exe protocol, you can instead directly head to the secret workshop under the facility. Arnold is chased and chased and chased, ending up in the secret prototype Freddy's location, where he uses the spring-lock suits found inside to drain the place's power, confronting the very much seething Dispatch. Or should I say, the Mimic! Yep, Dispatch was Fiona the entire time. Not really, it's actually right after the Jackie chase where she takes over. You can hear it in the stat. And she tells Arnold that since he's here, he needs to fix M2 and save Edwin. Delving deeper, you end up in good old Murray's house. You collect 5 reels, each showing the story of Murray's family and its very rapid deterioration. And with all 5 reels, you get this basic story. Edwin is something of a terrible dad, pushing away his wife and son alike in order to meet these harsh deadlines and digging himself out of the hole he's fallen into due to the fact that his father had passed away, leaving the business to him. One day, the unimaginable happens. Fiona is gone, the details of which we don't know. Edwin, all alone now with David, can't keep up with the already overwhelming work, now having to deal with a kid, making it much worse. His solution? The Mimic. The Mimic ends up taking the persona of Edwin's late wife, and for a time, they're happy. But unfortunately, not all is well. Upon the final reel, we see David's final birthday party before he takes his last. The game allowing us to fill in the blanks as well as the reveal that M1 was Fiona, piloting what we know to currently be in use by M2. It's assumed that Fiona held hope for M2 to take up the persona of David, and it's why she gave up her body. It's why she's so desperate for Arnold to, quote-unquote, fix M2. Arnold, after typing in the code used from the reels, finally activates this cradle protocol. The details on what this actually does are fuzzy at best, assumedly something to do with mexes, and lands himself in one final chase, where he finally escapes the facility. Being the world's most abused individual that's still breathing, the Mimic hitches a ride, crashing your car and leaving you to die upon the confiscation of your data diver, housing the Mimic blueprints. If you instead decided to spend several hours collecting, getting soft-locked, and experiencing some honestly boring minigames, you can upgrade the data diver one final time, and upon a New Game Plus save, once in Edwin's house, you can open previously inaccessible doors with these new bedtime story tapes hidden inside. If you collect all 6 and insert them into each tape socket, a vent opens leading you to the room of the FNAF 4 bite victim. No. Not really. But it is oddly similar. Supposedly this is David's room, and it's where you can read M2 a bedtime story, and with luck, you can stun M2, leaving him open for the data diver to penetrate him deep. As he twitches and convulses with your tool now deep inside, you release inside the Mimic, rewriting its very psyche. Wait, this sounds super gay. You end up resetting M2 and it shrinks down to become David? Now taking the persona of David, it curls up to his tiger plushie and goes to sleep with one final goodbye before, very unsatisfyingly, the game cuts to black, ending the secret of the Mimic. Anytime. Oh no, is he dead? Oh no! What happened? Can't move, by the way. Oh, just... What? You can't just fade to black? No! No! So what exactly was the secret? That there were 2 mimics? That the Mimic was Fiona? That William and Henry are one and the same, evil but in different ways? Cut from the same cloth, perhaps? Maybe. Now let's talk about the pacing. I think the pacing is strange at best. I think the game really just shows its hand and gives you too many upgrades super early at the start of the story. You honestly deal with animatronics lickety-split and move on just as quickly, so that the player can have more freedom as soon as possible. At least that's my theory. Once you're at the final 2 upgrades, the game seems to really slow down. And the slowness is not helped by the fact that the game can end at 4 a.m. It really does go from super fast to way too slow to wait, the game's over. That being said, I love the way the pacing is for the Mimic, Jackie, and Dolly sections. Their sections felt just long enough to take some time, but not feel too bloated. Unlike the Big Top section, where immediately upon playing the 3 carnival games, 2 of which are literally the same, you have to restart the power the exact same way 3 times. I noticed that the small amount of collectibles in the game were very lacking in terms of engagement, and there were several moments where I think big areas were just missing them entirely due to the fact that you're not actually supposed to return to at least 30% of these places after leaving. The most egregious part of this lackluster pacing is absolutely in the secret ending. The fact that you are literally guaranteed to be forced to restart the game every time you want to do this on a new save is insulting. There is no way to get the Tiger Rock plush, which is absolutely pivotal to even doing the ending, if you're not on a New Game Plus save. And it makes for a very boring replay of the game if you've already gotten everything on the first time around. And to big top it off, the Moon minigame, which honestly is just the most bare bones and boring point and click anyone has ever played, takes literally like 30 minutes the first time. While I really do enjoy running through this game, and I will most definitely be doing some NMS speedruns, both on stream and on my own time, I still think this is a glaring issue with the game. What's not to love about the puzzles? Well, to start off, the crane game. It sucks. It goes way too slow and it ends up being boring just because of how simple it is. You're never really challenged with the crane game. The only thing that was even slightly challenging was just trying to rack my brain around how to run around in circles with the stupid present that was at the theater. It took me like 15 minutes to actually like line it up perfectly and then go all the way around the facility to find the correct path. Super annoying. I hated both of them. The Remnant Juice puzzle, where it's basically just you turning on the power, because yes, I definitely think that it's Remnant. We'll talk about it later. It's alright, but like it's way too repetitive, especially in that aforementioned Big Top section. Oh, the number puzzles. Oh god, I love that. I'm not against trying to find the numbers that are scattered across the room and forming them into a code. What I do have a problem with is when they're on the camera, and the camera is several rooms away. I had this one specific puzzle that took me a collective 5 hours because I just kept returning back to it, finding new numbers on the wall, and still not knowing what to do with it, because there was like 9 numbers that I could find. No matter what combos I would use, trying to figure out if they had any patterns to them, if they had any similarities with the way that they're placed or the way they look, it didn't matter, because apparently there were cameras several rooms away that was telling me the code. I think the quote-unquote boss fights, or the bit where you roam in the room with the enemy, are fine enough prologue for the main delight that is typically the chase, but I will say the chase does unfortunately get old after the first time. I kind of wish it was more gameplay and less set path that you follow. While probably taking a lot more time and care for the devs, it would certainly result in a much more memorable chase section that you have to spend longer in and actually figure out how to beat. I didn't really mind the quote-unquote Star Orphan. I don't know if that's the actual name. That's what the item description told me. If you can even call it an item description. What the fuck, Steelwool? I didn't mind those puzzles when it was against that secret enemy in the basement. We might talk about him later. But when I did mind it was in that god-awful teleporting section. If you know, you know. I won't spoil it just yet, but oh, I hated it. Let me tell you. Apparently there was a secret tape I missed in there, and I'm just wondering like how I was ever supposed to find that if I'm just trying to follow the arrows while not getting murdered, but you know, whatever. Another notable puzzle is actually the elevator, and while I don't really enjoy it now, it's kind of run its course at this point. I do think it was pretty fun the 3-ish times it was required in the story. So yeah, overall the puzzles aren't the strongest, but they make you think enough that you don't necessarily feel stupid. and you don't feel the game thinks you're stupid most of the time, at least. Now, I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. I don't think most of the Mimic suits are scary, more creepy than anything, which is most likely what they're trying to go for. I think that most of the very bare bones suits are the ones that are actually a little bit unsettling. Any of the dirt covered ones or the ones that are falling apart don't really irk me the way that the others do. I do think that the horror is incredibly backed by great sound design. It adds a ton to this Mimic's initially imposing figure. I do especially like the jerky and inhuman movement that the Mimic does. It really helps the player get into this mindset to see this thing as a monster that you want to avoid at all costs. Now, while I think the game can be very tense when it comes to avoiding the Mimic, this really only goes so far just due to the fact that I don't like the jump scare noise. Most of the jump scares look fine, right? They're your typical 3D steel jump scares. I just cannot believe that they're still using the stupid-ass security breach noise. Oh my god, at least they put like a few screams over it from whatever animatronic is killing you, because Lord have mercy, we need to get rid of this thing already. Oh my god, burn it with fire. I mean, don't do that. Send it into the ether. We know fire doesn't work in this series. Harping on the more quiet sections a little bit more, I love it when the game goes quiet, right? It's so good when it just puts you in a dark room and it leaves it up to your imagination, because sometimes the Mimic actually does take quite a while to trigger, so you're just sat there waiting, seeing what you can do without getting too close to any possible deaths from these mascots scattered around. And the stillness of the rooms plus the silence, where you can just hear the breath of your character and the hum of machinery in the background, it really just ups the horror just that much more, and I absolutely love it. Once again, the audio in this game is second to none. Hey, wait, now that I think about it, I actually think Big Top doesn't have the security breach noise. Speaking of Big Top, is it just me, or does he like double in size when he goes on the actual attack? Like, it's kind of weird. He looks like very small and almost unimposing when you first give him your ticket, and then when he bursts through the ceiling, it's almost like he took some steroids or something. It's kind of crazy. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I'm not going to harp on this too much because I've already kind of glazed it in the other sections, but literally the best part of this game is the peak sound design, jump scares not included. I'm pretty annoyed that they keep reusing the stupid security breach jump scare. I've already told you that. Like, they're not even using the good one from Vanny. Like, come on, give us fucking anything. Jesus. Once again, I love, love, love the quiet moments in this game. The breathing of Kellen Goff or Arnold in those quieter moments where you can just hear the shakiness in his breath really just keeps me wanting more from the different dialogue that he says throughout the game. All 5 lines. Anyway. But yeah, speaking of the dialogue, Lord have mercy, Edwin's lines are really bad. Edwin, when he's talking about his dead wife, is like the standout worst voice acting I've ever heard in my life. I don't know if that was the voice actor's fault. I don't know if that was the direction. I don't know if that was intentional for whatever reason. But it sounds like he stubbed his toe and it's a mere inconvenience that his wife is suddenly gone and he's a single father. I swear to God, listen to that clip again. I'll even play it right now. All right, go.
Oh, why did you go? You weren't even supposed to be there. You were supposed to be here with me and David. Oh, how am I supposed to tell David that his mother is gone? How am I supposed to raise a kid on my own? His life is ruined.
So yeah, it looks like she died.
My life is ruined.
Wow, that was some awful voice acting. Oh no, my wife's dead. What am I gonna do? My life is ruined. David's life is ruined. That is not good line delivery.
Oh, why did you go?
Oh, my wife's dead. Why did you go?
To be here with me and David. Oh, how am I supposed to tell David that his mother is gone?
I stubbed my toe. Oh. You cannot tell me he does not sound like mildly inconvenienced. Other than that, I really like the voice acting in this game. I don't necessarily know about Dispatch's lines. I don't know what's supposed to be the mimic, what's not supposed to be the mimic, because sometimes he's talking and then he suddenly changes tone. Other times, like after the Jackie chase, you can actually like hear the static very loudly before it switches to what is presumably the mimic. And I just don't know how to tackle that because I don't have the confirmation that it was intentional or not. Obviously, as I've already said, I really wanted more from Kellen Goff. I don't know why they have this absolute like masterclass of a voice actor and they refuse to use him, but whatever. I'm sure they'll bring Arnold back in another game. If they don't, I'm gonna riot. Let's move on. Oh god, the visuals. People are gonna be mad at me for this, but I like the art style. I just don't think it's scary. I think it kind of shoots itself in the foot with the art style. It kind of just betrays the horror a little bit. Now, as is pretty normal with Steel Wool games, there's lots of laggy textures that are really low res, and there's pop-ins everywhere. I think the game looks pretty great, but aside from that, it's probably the only like real criticism I have in terms of the visuals actually running well. There are certainly laggy moments that could use a lot more optimization, but I'm sure Steel Wool actually having a game with good bones on it will like legitimately keep their promises for once and go back and fix it. The location set deck around the building is pretty flippin' good. Like when you first step into the facility and you see that big old animatronic show on display, you are genuinely amazed because just about most of us have been to those, you know, like Chuck E. Cheese's, those Disneylands where you see those creepy animatronics. Like, this is proprietary technology at its best. It is good stuff. And let me tell you, the animatronic design is so peak. Shout out to my girl, Fiona. They all look amazing, even if I would like more of them to capture that creep factor that the prior games used to have. Only design I'm not a fan of, like, period, is probably the trash suit that the Mimic wears at the end. And I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for it, but I just do not like the stupid Bonnie head on him. When he walks around, he looks like a pouty child with the bouncy Bonnie ears. He does not look creepy in any way, as far as I'm concerned. Once again, the audio carries the Mimic's presence in this game. Alright, I know we've all been waiting for this. Let's talk about the bugs. Now, obviously, it's a Steel Wool game. Like, there's a ton of soft locks. I'm gonna be real. I'm actually finding a lot more replaying the game as I was playing it for the first time, which is pretty funny. I never got this one. Oh, big spoilers, by the way. I don't know why you would click on a review if you don't want spoilers, you fucking idiot. At the end of the game, there is a section where you have to get into multiple spring locks and walk up to certain cameras to block the doors and drain the power of the room. If you do it in a specific way, you can actually get completely soft-locked and just unable to do anything because, yes, it does checkpoint you there, and you will have to actually just restart the entire game. The entire game. I found this one actually 2 minutes into playing when I first streamed it. If at the start menu, you actually mash spacebar. I haven't been able to recreate this because I didn't really care to find out, but you will literally just lock the game into a warning screen that would typically be there right before it shows you the different profiles that you can select. And yeah, so that happened 2 minutes into my playthrough. That was pretty funny. You can also be pushed into walls and trapped by the passive bots, the cleaners specifically. I've seen once or twice.
Okay.
Hey, little buddy.
Hi, Boone. How are you? I pet him, and now I'm stuck in the wall. You're pushing me into the wall. I crouched down, and now I can't get up.
God, dude. Let me finish the game.
You're ruining everything! Fuck!
In the Captain's Play section, if you finish it, and right before you're gonna fall into the floor where Dolly finds you, you can actually be locked in the blackness of the loading screen, and it will just infinitely load. Speaking of infinite loading, any jump scares can actually soft lock you. I don't know how exactly this happens, or even if it is actually any jump scares. But I have had at least 2 or 3 deaths where I was completely locked and had to quit out the game. Attempting to squeeze into assumedly crawlable spaces, for example behind the Chronicle games, can also soft lock you. Trying to interact with Jackie's generator when at an elevated level can soft lock you. Other than that, I don't think I've really seen too many others, not that I remember at least, or wrote down. But yeah, as you can see, this game is definitely still pretty broken. If Steel Wool does not work on this, I will be very disappointed. It's still a good game. If Steel Wool doesn't fix this, I will admit it does kind of drag down the game a little bit, especially that Springlock one. I heard specifically that they did address that and they are going to be fixing it in the most recent hotfix that comes out. But other than that, yeah, it does need some tweaking for sure. There are constant stutters in specific areas where the game tries to load in too much. I think that overall this game just needs a nice fresh coat of paint in terms of optimization. It was a struggle trying to stream this thing. If you were there, you know it was really bad. Even when I put my OBS on the highest priority I could, it was still lagging, specifically my OBS. Now, it's not like I have an absolute deity of a computer, right? There are still some areas in the game that will lag me. But mostly it seemed to be my OBS that was actually struggling. I noticed that the dolly chase, when you're on those conveyor belts, and a lot of the constantly moving machinery, like the claw puzzle after the Chica section, is really harsh on the game's resources and on your computer. And I definitely think that needs to be fixed. Now, I will say this has kind of always been a problem, but yeah, the textures in the game are laggy sometimes. It does have annoying pop-ins. There are constant audio issues depending on your location and what is currently playing at the time. I think one of the most egregious things on this entire list is the bad saves and the lack of kept progress in some areas. Did you know that lockers can actually deload the entire map if it, like, squeezes you? So basically, whenever you exit a locker, it opens fully, and it doesn't actually block you from squeezing back in. So if the doors close upon you and you crouch, it for some reason shoots you up, and you can entirely deload the map with that newfound height in specific cases. Other things I'd like to mention: the ball gun that you can receive in the big top section can actually shoot out projectiles that are physical enough that you can climb on top of them if you shoot them down. I've seen some crazy skips with this, and honestly, I'd really like to try out some myself, but it needs to be mentioned that there are several things that can be absolutely broken and deloaded because of these weird mantling bugs that can occur. Other than that, I will admit the base game is pretty well made. A lot of these bugs you do have to seek out, so that's a really refreshing thing to have happen. And yeah, other than those kind of unavoidables, I will say Steel Wool did a pretty decently good job. Still, I am a bit salty at the fact that I got so many soft locks on my first playthrough. But, you know, at the very least, the core experience of the game is not too heavily obscured or ruined in this sense.
Ruined? Like security breach?
So, take this all with a grain of salt. But I just like to talk about all the different characters that we see and kind of speak over the story beats and the things that we get to learn about them that is suggested about them, and just kind of talk about my thoughts on them as a whole. Starting with Edwin. I think that this game portrays in a very great way that he is just like a terrible person. He is like constantly abusing his workers. He neglects his son and wife, most importantly. And he seems to be a pretty ruthless businessman at that. He has these weird like remnant tubes almost. I feel like he probably knows at the very least about what remnant is and how it works, due to the fact that it is so prominent in his entire facility. By the way, I'm calling it remnant. It is that hot molten metal that you see flowing around basically the entire factory. I feel like there is little to no wiggle room in terms of asking what that actually is. It seems pretty obvious to me with the fact that it can actually power the facility that it kind of has to be Remnant at this point. Unconfirmed for sure, but a bit of headcanon, if you will. I think the foreshadowing in the audio log showing that Edwin is allowing this potentially dangerous location to hold his child's playground with loose safety protocols is a great way to show that Edwin is really just a terrible father and extremely neglectful at the best of times. Edwin is the one who made M1 after his wife's death to take care of his son, and it seems that he made a deal with Henry and William, potentially leading to his bankruptcy in an attempt to absorb the MCM facility under the Fazbear belt. It seems that he also made the spring lock design safer within his own facility, due to the fact that he was probably contracted a lot to work on these spring lock suits, and later the prototype Freddy Fazbear location and animatronics. As I mentioned about the Remnant, he does use it in his facility to power most of, if not all of it, and this potentially means that the trio, Henry, William, Edwin, know a lot more than we would initially think with how early it is in the timeline. We know that Edwin attempted to create M2 and he failed in doing so, and although this isn't confirmed on any logs, it seems that he resigned himself to using M1's body in order to try recreating the success of M1, and it's how Fiona gets into the mech's device. And speaking of M2, he is confirmed to be the one that destroys M2's legs after seeing it mimic David, which presumably leads to M2 leaving Edwin for dead, maybe. Potentially even taking him away somewhere and killing him. It is absolutely not confirmed that he dies there. The books actually kind of lead us to believe that he might be left alive, but we have little to no confirmation on if he is dead or alive, so I guess we'll drop it there. Now, these two aren't super big when it comes to, in terms of the story. Henry and William. Henry is potentially complicit with William, at the very least, ruining Edwin's business, and for whatever reason, the two of them directly attempted, and succeeded in, sabotage and closing of the MCM facility. And as for William, we know for a fact that he straight up was the aggressor in sabotaging Edwin by seemingly buying out his employees and stealing company documents. We know for a fact that he is with Fazbear, and he commissioned Edwin in tandem with Henry in order to make this absolutely insane prototype. We don't really know why he's doing this to Edwin. Hopefully we find out a little bit more later down the line. But we do know that, once again, he potentially caused and knows about the secrets behind it, but that's kind of it. They really are just very briefly in the game. Now on to Fiona. We know that she's the wife of Edwin, and she's probably, like, the only genuine and good person in the game, aside from Arnold, of course. We know that she worked at MCM, and she designed several iconic designs of the classic and now current animatronics that we know. We know that she probably died at Fall Fest, and we know that somehow she felt a calling to Fall Fest in a weird way that most of the other protagonists in the Five Nights at Freddy's books actually seem to respond to as well. We know that she becomes the first mimic, M1, and basically becomes a parent to David once more while still piloting the body. We know that soon enough she moved her consciousness to the later named Mexus machine, giving up her body for David after his death, and once Edwin disappears, she grows worried, not realizing it's now M2 that she is currently seeking out, and tries to reach out to this Edwin to no avail. To her very last line of dialogue, it is shown that she still wants to attempt to fix M2, assuming that this will bring back the trio and make them the perfect family once more. Speaking of David, we know that M2 holds a resentment towards Edwin because of his neglect. We know that M2 is the empty vessel of M1 turned into dead kid, but alive, basically. We know that M2 was beaten by Edwin, and that's why he turned evil. And we also know that it was M2 who is mimicking Edwin, basically fooling Fiona into thinking Edwin is still alive or even present in the facility, and has done something to Edwin, resulting in, at the very minimum, his legs being damaged in turn. Arnold, what's not to say about Arnold? Clearly, he's the best boy of the entire game. I love him. And might possibly be an actual demigod, surviving literal several story falls and able to run at full power without sleep. Not to mention, he is able to outrun the Mimic, sometimes. Jokes aside, he's seemingly just another abused employee of Fazbear Entertainment. There are no hints to say that he could have been an employee bought out by William, as when we see those emails, he doesn't really react to them in any way, shape, or form. We know for a fact, well, maybe not a fact, it was cut, but he is divorced, lost his kid, and his parents are dead. Now on to just my closing thoughts. I just want to talk about first what I disliked about the game before wrapping it up with all my positives. Once again, bad autosaves. I have lost a lot of progress due to this fact. I really wish there was a way to manually save or load. The fact that keeping the data diver locks you into the ending due to not having a load button makes it super annoying if you want to go back and do the bad ending, or especially if you want to go back and explore with your maximum security data diver. I've talked about this one quite a lot, but this game was so impossible to stream that I had to record a lot of footage off camera for that initial video I released about my experience with the game. And even then, you can see for yourself, I did not include a lot of it just because even that was really annoying since it didn't sync up with the things I was saying and you know, the sound effects in the background. I felt some of the puzzles were like intentionally misleading in the worst ways possible, so much so that I spent actual hours on a door code that its solution wasn't even in the same room. I personally think that the AI, once again, just really sucks and doesn't actually differ that much from the horrible AI of Security Breach. There's a ton of clipping through doors that they can do. I have been spotted in several different safe rooms. I'm constantly being spotted through walls and hiding locations, might I add. You can literally see the animatronics snap their heads to your location directly sometimes when looking for you. The Mimic typically only follows the more directly available path to whatever noise they have heard or sight they've seen, so making noise in different locations can make it just straight up ignore you and chase the noise instead, which just kind of feels like the threat isn't really there. The Mimic clearly teleports from suit to suit, by the way. I don't know how they would have done it better, but I would have probably liked to see the Mimic actually exit the suits and intentionally hide from the player rather than activating when they are in the vicinity. Even it just like running off camera and then teleporting would have made for a slightly more immersive feel. I think that the voice acting was actually stand out as one of the funniest things I've ever seen in any game. Specifically, not that it was bad, but there was one point where it was legitimately awful. In Murray's voice log, he speaks about his deceased wife, and it might be the worst voice acting I've ever heard. I don't know if it was the direction he received. I don't know if he was told to say it that way. I don't know if they didn't convey to him the way he was supposed to be acting, but he basically sounds like he stubbed his toe as he recorded it, and it was just like a minor inconvenience that his wife is now dead and he has to take care of his child as a single father. Speaking of his wife, there is one point of confusion for me, at least when I was playing the game, as to why Fiona was in the Mex's machine and the M2 robot was shown to basically be an exact copy of M1. The physical form, at least. I kind of assumed that M1 was the program, and until I watched a theory video stating that, yeah, it is assumed that she switched bodies and M2 is now in that body, I really didn't get it when I first played. It is kind of a basic thing to assume. Yeah, I'm stupid. But even still, it did serve as a point of confusion just because of the very limited amount of knowledge I had of the books. Now, this is probably my biggest gripe. There is a complete lack of replayability with this game. There are like 0 cutscene skips, or actually there's one at the very beginning cutscene, which I cannot for the life of me find out how to actually skip. I've seen it. I have seen it in other people's playthroughs, but every button on my keyboard just is not doing anything. There are several bugs I found that can make the dialogue be completely skipped or sped up, but once again, it is completely unintentional, so I would appreciate some form of speed up in that regard. Now let's end this off on a more positive note. I am such a big fan of the OSTs. I think it is probably the standout best part of this game. I love a lot of the character design. Not the amalgamation, I've probably already talked about it, but yeah, that's probably the weakest point of character design, I would have to say. I love what very little we get to see from Arnold, even if it makes me crave more. I think we would benefit greatly from just learning what is Arnold's fate in the next games, because, like, come on, Sewell, he deserves a happy ending after all he suffered through. He's not even like a bad guy. I actually really fell in love with Fiona and her story with Edwin and becoming the Mimic. I thought it was brilliant the way they portrayed it to us. You have to actually seek it out. And most of it isn't actually too hidden, that you can come across a very large chunk of it and still be left with questions, but be completely intrigued with what is there. I think that the little bit of lore that ties William and Henry in this game is extremely interesting and exactly what we needed. It is not super blatant, it's not too vague, and it just gives way for a lot of theory fodder, and I love it. Speaking of the dense lore, the amount of the books that is kept in is like just enough for anyone, assuming you actually have the basic story and prior knowledge of all the games timeline, ensuring that they don't have to read them, and I love that fact. Even providing a lot more for people who did read the books as well. And if you seek it out, the logs and emails provide enough of a story that gets you attached, as I've already mentioned. Most of the audio logs I thought were really well done, except for, once again, that Murray one. Let's not talk about it. I loved the chase sections a lot, even though I would like maybe it to be a lot more skillful to succeed in these chase sequences, maybe make it a lot more gameplay tied instead of just having it basically have a set path. I think you should make it a little bit more gimmicky and have that gimmick be fun in order to escape this animatronic. I think it would be a lot cooler. Yeah, I have to admit, I am getting tired of chase sequences that are cut and dry with how they're played, and there's no real wiggle room in between. But hey, that's just me. I thought the chases, irregardless, were extremely fun. I loved the audio design. I think that might be my second favorite thing about this game. And I love how imposing the Mimic can be in those quieter sections because of the absolutely stupendous audio. But yeah, that is actually going to wrap up my thoughts on Secret of the Mimic. While I do think there are a lot of low points of the game, I think for sure that this is worth the $40 admission, and I cannot wait to continue playing it, speedrunning it, and just exploring more of the story. And honestly, I couldn't ask more of a FNAF game, especially in this sort of dark timeline where we've gotten several games that are a lot more hit and miss than they used to be. Irregardless, I think it's just about time that we say farewell to this older form of storytelling and gameplay that the FNAF games used to be, and say hello to this new ushering of the Mimic and Fazbear Entertainment's history. And with that, I'm going to end it here. Secret of the Mimic for me has been an absolute roller coaster of emotions, but I think I walked away from it much happier than I did with the expectations I had going in. So I'm going to have to rate it in 8 out of 10. By far, I think one of my highest ratings I have given to any FNAF game. And for sure, I do think this game is in contention for my favorite of the series. If that's not high enough praise, then I don't know what is. But irregardless, that is going to be about it for today. So thank you everybody so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed my little review. If you do disagree, I would like to hear your thoughts in the comments. As long as you are respectful, of course, I will respond in kind. Thank you everybody so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitch, join the Discord down below. As always, I do stream just about 4 times a week, but thank you all for bearing with me. Lots of love to all of you, and of course, as always, Have a day.